And then it seems that in response, the LLMs are also coming in and trying to improve their capabilities to, if nothing else, make sure this probably doesn't happen again in the future. So, for instance, OpenAI has been coming out with its own acquisition announcements, finally starting to use some of that $10 billion they have from Microsoft and a billion of their own money, and whoever and whatever other billions are probably committed to them, based on what they're doing. So they've got Rockset for kind of database work and data management, as well as Multi, which seems like a bit more of an acqui-hire, but it seems to be out there to help them with collaboration. So OpenAI realizes that they need to still do more to turn their models into tools. And they obviously have an idea of what enterprise applications are supposed to look like. And they obviously have daddy Microsoft or mommy Microsoft, whatever you want to call it, right there with them to help with that co-development and R&D and M&A strategy.
Yeah, I think there are two big takeaways in the TechCrunch article talking about their acquisition of Multi. It raised a few points. The first one that was sort of staggering to me is that they are estimated to hit over $3.4 billion in revenue this year, OpenAI. That's a shocking number, given really how sort of one-dimensional the product is at the moment. It's got a
Yeah.
relatively limited use case. And it speaks very clearly to, I mean, we've talked in the past about they are clearly going after the enterprise, both directly as well as through their partnership with Microsoft, as are others of the frontier model set, trying to figure this out. And I think this is still early, wild west days, but that number actually shocked me a bit. But what I do think that this is indicative of, also combined, if you look at the Anthropic's release of Claude 3.5 Sonnet, with, I forgot what they call it, but they've introduced this new operating window that runs alongside your prompt and exchange, where you ask it to build something, it builds in this window where you can now interact with it, and it becomes this collaborative sort of like space that you're actually working with this AI model. And I think that all of these collectively are reflective of the fact that these foundational models are recognizing that they need to be doing more to make this whatever, the ability to
Yeah.
operationalize it. To that organizations need to be able to do more than just ask a question. It's sort of like, it's like if you hired an employee and all they did is in the corner, like some sage, that you came up to ask a question, they gave you an answer, and that's all they did. It's like, well, that wouldn't be very useful. You wouldn't hire that employee. You want them to be able to do things. And so I think increasingly we're seeing that this entire shift towards agentic AI and AI agents is all about actually acting on it. And so I found it, Multi is interesting. We'll see if it just turns out to be an acqui-hire or not. But if they actually look at building in a collaboration platform of some form into ChatGPT or into the broader OpenAI ecosystem, could be really interesting. Is that a threat to a Zoom? I mean, that's what Multi was all about, right? I mean, could be really fascinating stuff. So I looked at all of that, and it was head scratching, or what's the Arsenio Hall kind of stuff that makes you go, kind of
Yeah.
thing, more than.
Yes, they're obviously looking at the future. And to the extent that you can get two or more people to collaborate with an AI and ask questions and then create that multi-person contextual window and dialogue, that's an interesting capability, even if AI honestly doesn't get any better than it is right now. And honestly, with these large language models, we are seeing incremental improvements right now. We had this big thing that happened 2 years ago, and it was really impressive. And since ChatGPT 3, honestly, we've just been seeing little bits and pieces move forward. And that's honestly what we'll probably see for the foreseeable future. Maybe a couple of wow moments with video, but other than that, it's not like I'm expecting LLMs and analytics to suddenly bridge their gaps with each other completely over the next year.
Yeah, no, I think it is interesting. I think, going back to what we were saying, I think that all of this is indicative of this era where it's like, okay, we're sort of past that, wow, my gosh, it's shocking. And now saying, how can we actually use this? And frankly, the Rockset acquisition, I don't want to downplay that, it's also a part of that story. It's all about, how do I take my data, infuse it with this model, hopefully in a secure way, so that I can actually, make my world actionable, which we talked about last week with Apple's announcements, right? That
Mhm.
ability to drive context is absolutely going to be essential. So I think we're seeing all of this, that everyone is sort of recognizing that. And to your point, I'm sort of losing track of what we're talking about next, but to your point, right? I think we do have to recognize that we're probably past the point of seeing these explosive gains in LLMs. I mean, we say that in the next week there's going to be some crazy announcement that's going to change it all, but it certainly seems that that's kind of where how things are playing out.
Yeah, it feels like there's a new model every week and it's 0.2% better than the last one. So it now goes to the top of the heap on the leaderboard perspective in terms of these benchmarks that we have. But it doesn't really feel like a fundamental change in what's happening. We all have a general idea of how to use an LLM, which is in and of itself kind of a miraculous thing after 18, 19, 20 months. But
Well, and remember, that isn't true. That's true of people like us, but 80% of the world still hasn't even tried one, or has only barely dabbled it, even with people like Meta putting it, into. So we are still super, super early days. That's the other part that I think is sort of confusing and conflicting, which is why I think there's going to be so much focus on how do we start putting this stuff into much more everyday use.